That's DB. I'm Ravi Lulla here at Hurrdat Sports Bar and Grill. We are joined now by Adam McClintock and Dave Bartoo from Matrix Analytical. Guys, how are you this morning?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Couple of
It's
G's.
hella early out here this morning, man.
DB, it's like, hey, this is tailor made for you, man. You're like this fountain of knowledge. Why not spew it early, man? No sense in waiting.
Oh, it would be fine if the dogs didn't get told. Alarm goes off at 5:50. My wife's like, "Really, really?" And I'm like, "It's Husker football, baby. We got to talk about it anytime."
So what would you get out of bed early for? It seems like it would be food prep. So food prep in Nebraska football, because those are two things I've seen you get up pretty early for.
Yes, right. I mean, anybody who loves the art of barbecue, you're getting up early. And it's way earlier than 5 a.m. And then come September, it's got to be getting my butt out of the tent for elk hunting in September. So my non-conference game is chasing bull elk all over the mountains.
Incredible, Adam. I blame you for getting this whole party started with number and test philosophy. Where do you guys want to start? You kind of know Ravi and I are almost, we're not on polar ends of the spectrum, but let's start with kind of laying out the groundwork for this cat testing. And you're widely regarded and known for helping coaches establish potential clients, but now it's kind of evolved into evaluating talent too, right? A one-stop shop.
Yeah, that's right. And this thing really started to get legs about 2 years ago. We kind of started seeing the need for athletes to be able to get exposure through other means besides having to travel for these expensive showcases that happen every summer and every spring across the country. So we started kind of using some of our connections we have with athletic departments we have worked with, and using a kinesiology study that the University of Michigan State did, which ranged from 1967 until 2004. It was called the Motor Performance Study. And what they did is they took 1,200 kids from the ages of 2 to 18, and they tested them on motor skills from the time they were young until they were, adult. Okay. They did this for 37 years. They have a ton of data. So we use that data to kind of use to create correlations between, okay, if a kid tests a certain level at 11, 12, 13 years old, what can that possibly correlate to when he's 16, 17, 18? Okay. We wanted to create a measure that measures total body athleticism that can be used across all age groups and across all statures. So using that core data and also some derivative studies that have come off since then, we were able to do that, and we back tested it for a year, and then this spring this is really the first spring we rolled it out.
Okay, so you used the dirty D word. You said derivatives, and sometimes when you're dealing with people, it's like, well, you're the only ones that really know what you're pitting the data against when you talk about derivatives. How do you know kind of how to tweak it this early in the system?
Well, we took a full year to back test it. We went through and we gathered data from 5-6 years ago, and when kids who are going into college were 14, 15, 16, 13, 12, 13 years old. We got their combine data through some very nice folks who were doing it in the Phoenix area. And the kids who tested high at 12, 13, and 14, those were the kids that ended up being your high level prospects going into college. For example, we spotted a kid when he was 10 years old. His profile jumped off the page when he was 10 years old in Phoenix. We kind of, I circled his name. I went through and I wanted to know, okay, where's this kid at now? Did a search, and he was the number 6 wide receiver in the country in the 2024 class, and he's now at Oregon on full scholarship. So we have 3 or 4 or 5 different examples just like that, where we, in our back testing, we found that, hey, this works. This really stands out. We also did a lot of NFL testing. this really isn't made for professional athletes, because once a kid gets into a training table or an environment where environment where there's people's jobs to make them better, then it kind of muddies the waters a little bit. But it still really did a good job of determining what athleticism level do you have to be to start X amount of games in the NFL. So we did a lot of back testing before we really put this out in public, and that's kind of where we started our basis off right there.
So I'm curious with that original study, because I've been a proponent of multi-sport athletes and how that improves athleticism over the course of a person's life. Was there any component where they, and along with the testing data, that they looked at what sports the kids were playing kind of throughout their career? Because there was a Soviet study back from like the 70s where they tested guys on multi-sport athleticism and how that translated. It was for them, specifically hockey players. But I'm curious if there was any component of like multi-sport versus single sport on how that impacted the trajectory of athleticism over the years.
Well, one of the derivative studies we used to create our baseline for this, they did go into multi-sport versus single sport athletes, and we have found actually in our data that we have collected already. Like I said, we have nearly 5,000 profiles already this year. The kids who are multi-sport athletes, those are the ones that are testing the highest, because what this derivative study found was that at a younger age, the more types of movement and the more types of athleticism you train at a small age, when you're impressionable and your brain's learning how to move, the better off you're going to be in the long run as an athlete. So when parents reach out to us about how can they improve their CAT score, the first thing we ask is, hey, are you specializing in a sport? If they are, we say, hey, don't do that. Don't specialize in a sport at a young age. Be multifaceted. Go out and allow the kid to do 3 and 4 different sports before you hone in on the 1 or 2 that you really want to focus on. But early on, especially early on in development, it's important to get kids into more than one sport.
Dave, I'm interested. I'm curious, just in having talked to you for so long, kind of where you started, your personality and fit, big fit guy, and you'd make the numbers work. And you guys do a lot of strategizing with adults on, is this a good fit? How have you balanced, as you kind of grown and learned more, data versus the variables of like people's personalities? And you have to kind of separate the two, but know like where they go together. Like, I know what the numbers say, but the fit is this. Like, you've had to kind of negotiate that, right?
Well, it's something that's it gets back to why we reached out to you guys in the first place. Remember last week you were talking about the 3 questions we put up.
We're going to get to that.
Right, but it gets back to that, right? It gets back to that because when it comes down to players or coaches for your staff, so you got players on your roster, you got coaches for your staff, right? And this is the subjective part that is so difficult, because we can't put on the emotional fit. We can't put a number on the mental stamina, the drive, the desire to achieve. And so I think that's where time has to come in, right? You have to learn about a coach, or you got to learn about a player. So I think the first thing is you're trying to use data to find the good coaches, find the good players, but then it's going to take time to understand who they are and how well they actually fit into your overall staff or your overall roster, because we're numbers guys, right? Yeah. And so when we're looking for, if we're trying to build a staff, we're going to start with who's the best guy, right, on paper, or who are the 5 best guys. And what we've always told our coaches, whether they're out there doing research for early player identification through CAT or through our process of hiring and building staffs, it's here's the best one. No, here's your best group. Now talk to these people and find out who is going to be the best cultural fit on your roster or on your staff.
So at what point? So is it kind of a feel thing where you move off of the data, where you said, well, it's got to take time, where you move off of data where you still have to learn the ins and outs of the chemistry, right? Like that, is that where the good recruiting, whether it's for a player or for a staff, comes in? Those guys and gals that can narrow those variables once you move off of data.
Right. We're trying to use the data as a filter, right? It's an efficiency filter, right? Because it doesn't matter who the coach is, right? It can be your head football coach, right? It can be Matt. It could be your head baseball coach. It could be your head basketball coach. It can be your head softball coach, your new head volleyball coach, right? They have finite amount of time. So if they're looking for somebody on staff, let's say there's 100 people for a position staff, wouldn't it be easier if the data said, don't waste your time talking to these 50, right? These are the bottom half performers. Don't even waste your time. So now we cut the workload. Now you can spend twice as much money or twice as much time on half the people to narrow in on performance first. Now we have emotional fit. The same thing it goes with finding players, right? It's like there's 100,000 athletes in the state of Nebraska, but let's say all tested from 8 to 18. Adam and I can tell you which 95% to not even waste your time on with the film, because they physically can't make a roster at a sport at Nebraska. So yes, objective, filter first, create the efficiency, then create the relationships with the people that the numbers say, these are your best targets. Now go out and see who best fits in your culture.
So that goes into the question you guys asked on Twitter last week that brought up this whole discussion in the first place, where it was, hey, if you have to look at one thing first, and you kind of just answered the question there, is it your objective testing data, the athletic data? Is it the film, which is subjective, or the personality profile, which is subjective? You guys said, hey, you just said the data first to filter out everything else so you can do the subjective work more efficiently. Here's the way I changed the question a little bit, because I thought it was, because you're right. If you've got to filter out guys that just, you're never going to make a roster just because you're let's say a 5'9" Indian guy that runs like a 6'0" 40 at 18 years old. You're not going to make a roster. Right? So,
but he's so competitively tough.
Such a jerk. We like it. No. So, like, I get that part of it. But I changed it to ask DB if there's only one thing you can look at. Like, if you don't get the other two, is it psychological profile, is it tape, or is it the athletic testing? He said psychological profile, no questions asked. I went tape because I said, okay, the tape is going to give me, is this person good at my sport or at the sport that I'm looking at? I feel like I can get some idea of their athletic profile. And then the hardest one, which is where DB and I disagreed, is I felt like I could get enough of the mental makeup to give myself a shot on tape.
And you guys are probably thinking, we're data guys, and neither one of you two ding dongs picked data.
Only get the one.
No, that was, something, that was my fault. I wrote that poll. I wrote that question. See, Adam sent me the link to your show, and we both listened to it, and I loved it because it is two different points of view, right? But it got me thinking that I set that question up wrong, right? Because I agree. I think we'd all agree. We want all three, Dave, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is Nebraska, and especially now in the age of NIL and the portal, we have assets we have to allocate. We need as much information as we can. So the question should have been, if you have the opportunity to get all three, which one are you going to start with?
Oh,
I
got you.
Right?
Yeah.
Because you have the two subjective things, right? You have the mental side, right? And you have the football IQ or the softball IQ. You have the sport IQ, subjective. But the objective side of it is, does this player have the athleticism, even right? And you know, I'll use an example, and sorry, DB, if
Oh, this ought to be good.
well, not now, because now, Damon, your son, right?
Yep.
If we would have tested him, if he'd have gone through a cat combine when he was 8 years old, his score now, everybody, let's just use Nebraska football as an example.
Okay.
90, the numbers based on what we've seen, about 97% of everybody on that football roster scored above a 75 coming out of high school. Okay. Now, our numbers are age and stature adjusted. So that kid that was a 75 as a senior in high school was between a 70 and an 80 when he was 16. He was between a 70 and 80 when he was 12. He was between a 70 and 80 when he was 9 years old.
How do you gauge peak? Is that where the stature part comes in?
Yeah.
Well, see, the thing is though, is there's no peak in our numbers. See, our numbers are adjusted for age. So right now, I know this is a little bit different. See, because when we talk athleticism, you're like, Dave, the nine-year-old, you know, is going to be more athletic than when he was 8, and he's going to be more athletic when he's 10. And it's this curve, right? And it goes up and up and up until you reach your peak athleticism, which, you know, right? And that's the curve people get in their mind. Ours projects where they're going to be when they're 18, right? So they are basically their peak potential is when you're born, right? But we don't know what the potential is going to be until you start developing. And so this is where the genetics comes in. And so, you know, actually one of the best examples is Adam's son, right? You know, because Adam first tested this on his kids, and one of his, actually they're both really competitive. They're crazy like their mom.
Noted.
But Adam, your oldest, you've tested him what? 5 times, 6 times?
Yeah. Yep.
Right. And
What age to what age?
That
and he's working hard, and his score over the always between 65 and 70. You know, you guys are asking the question is, when do they reach their peak potential? What we're measuring is what their peak potential could be before they even hit it. That's the advanced part of it, right? If we test, you know, we're testing Adam's kid, we're testing Damon's kid, we're testing any kid in the state of Nebraska, right? Any 8-year-old, any 9-year-old, 10-year, you name it. We are modeling what their peak athleticism is projected to be, not where they're at today, where they're going to be tomorrow. That's the research edge, because if you have all of that knowledge, now you know who to get off of early. You don't waste time on film. You don't waste time on subjective things like, you know, what's their mental makeup, because physically the genetics just don't hunt, and you're never going to be able to make the roster.
That's kind of, that's going to nip that takes a little air out of my sails over there, DB.
So I would say, I know you hate that.
I do, right? Full disclosure, like, but I get it, right? You can't polish a turd, but I need a starting point of level of competitiveness, because I've seen so many good play. This is what you'd probably tell me. They'd say to me, hey, that's fine. A guy may not compete hard every day, but he gives himself a chance because he meets the basic benchmark. Your guy that you may like, his emotional stamina doesn't give you near the chance because he doesn't hit the physical attributes. Like, you're just starting with the base level of physical attributes before you make any predictions on anything, right? You just want the base level of athleticism.
And then out of that smaller find the competitive
Yeah,
guys
I get
that give you a chance in the long term.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a three-legged stool, guys. So you have your foundational athleticism, you have your technical skill, and you have your competitive stamina, right? You've got to have all three of those things realistically to be a good college athlete. I mean, they're all equally important, but we start with foundational athleticism because if you don't have that, the other two don't matter. I mean, if you're not fast enough, if you're not strong enough, if you're not agile enough, you're not gonna make the roster. I mean,
I'm floored.
me,
It's not even a pivot. I'm floored at your in addition to, because when you're compiling lists for coaches and all these schools, they hire you, and it's like, hey, we need a pool of candidates. We need a pool of candidates. You can wash your hands free of the decisions they make once
You give them the
you
appropriate
give
pool.
them the appropriate pool.
Hmm.
How it's such a difference, because you're talking to adults, but with kids and margin of error and growth, you're still eliminating the variables because of the baseline of data. So it's still the same, even though my mind is blown. That's like, all right, you're getting adults for adults, you're getting young people for adults, but it's still, the catalyst is just the raw data. What you do with it is up to you, right? Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah, and
Yep.
and this was born out of a desire to help kids get exposure. I mean, this wasn't made to eliminate kids and their opportunities. This was created to go out and find kids in remote areas that can't get to these showcases and stuff.
How'd
And
you
we
pick,
have a go ahead.
how'd you pick what was important to you to test?
Like in the combine, what you were testing.
So those things were determined by the motor performance skills study that was done. We left that up to the kinesiology and kinematics folks that were a lot smarter than us in deciding, how the body actually moves and what constitutes agility, speed, and power. So we left that up to them. I don't have any letters before my name, so I'm not going to go down that route. But
Yeah, well, hey, in full disclosure, I don't even know what the formulas are. So I bounced this off an MIT guy with expertise in kinematics. And for everybody listening, I had to look up kinematics 3 years ago, folks. I didn't even know what it was. And it's the math.
Kinesiology eliminates a lot of people that think that they want to do like PT or, they can't even be gym teachers without kinesiology. So it's like,
Right. So, so it's just a math formula. Yeah, Adam, you keep trying to explain where it came from, but it was a lot of smart people helping with the formula to make it hunt.
So let me ask you this, because I consider myself a little bit of a strength conditioning nerd. I'm curious with
a lot of the nerd part.
with football,
we all are.
with football specifically, and then you mentioned a lot of other sports that this can apply to as well. How do you determine the sort of the projection scores? Because that's really what they are, right? You're projecting their peak athleticism at whatever age they're at. Does that change, or how does that formula change based on, like, a lineman's going to have different kind of markers than a cornerback, and a quarterback's going to have different markers than a basketball player who's going to have different markers than the one that really intrigues me. You brought up softball, so I think softball, baseball, those are highly skill sports. Like, how do you kind of tweak or read the formula differently based on sort of those different variables?
That's the beauty of this whole thing is it's weighted in a way where it really, you can apply it to any sport. Like I have a perfect example of this right now. We did a showcase here in Owasso, Oklahoma, in the spring, and there was an 8th grade girl there who scored through the roof, athletically. She wasn't the fastest, she wasn't the quickest, but she demonstrated really, really high ceiling power outputs. Okay. Nobody expected her to win the showcase on the female side, and she did. she went out, and as an 8th grader, she competed in a state competition here for track and field this last week, and they let her compete as an 8th grader. She won the discus and was runner up in the shot put as an 8th grader.
Mm.
So our CAT score found her in March before she even did anything in track at all. She'd never thrown a shot put or discus before. Okay. She goes out for track beginning of March, and she ends up this phenom in discus and shot put because of the power output that she showed. Okay. This isn't just for football. This works really well for football, but we've actually found a lot of use for this in the female side of athletics, female soccer, lacrosse, even flag football. Another great example of this is that Dave, the soccer player in Saskatchewan,
Oh yeah, man! Middle of winter, Arctic Circle. This is a
Find her when you're for elk. What like?
no caribou, baby. They're up there hunting caribou and polar bears where this girl was at. No, so I'm going to get to her story really quick, but two quick subjects on what you're talking about there. One, the common denominator is these are all fast twitch team sports. Okay. And so now with softball, baseball, we don't have the physical contact. Soccer, football, lacrosse, flag football, we do. Okay. So one of our goals is, as we collect this data, once we start getting millions of data points, hundreds of thousands of data points, we might be able to specialize the CAT scoring into a sport, right? But kids change sports all the time. And so what we're looking for is, like if we're doing this in the state of Nebraska, I'm just looking for every great athlete. And what we want is a cycle of retesting every year so we can watch their progression. But one of the responses we always get when they test is, what's your current favorite sport? And that changes. So we're just trying to find the athlete. Now, whether that athlete is going to end up being a baseball player or a football player or a soccer player, the goal, one of the stated goals of what we do is keeping those kids in state, right? You've identified them, you followed them, connected, and boom, whatever sport they choose, they're probably going to be good at it. But yeah, as Adam would say, we got a sport combine up in Regina, Saskatchewan. I mean, indoor, probably snow howling outside. And there's I think, what was she 15-year-old, 2 months? Something like that.
14, yep.
Yeah, 14, 11 or something like that. And our scoring is 0 to 100, and she popped 87.8. Okay, it was the highest female score in North America that we had found year to date. Okay, she's only 15 years old. She plays soccer, and she doesn't exist on anybody's radar. This is in the middle of nowhere, and this is a 1 in 500, maybe 1 in 1,000 athlete. Okay, this is she had her highest female score since Alex Morgan, since we reverse engineered Alex Morgan's score when she was 17. And this girl was completely unknown. And the first thing we did is we got information onto all of our big D1 clients, because at 87, 88, that is big time D1 potential athleticism. And now there are a number of soccer programs, big soccer programs, that know of her. Now whether she likes soccer in 4 years, whether she has the mental makeup to stick with it in 4 years, that's not what we do.
Let me ask you. Let me get you out on this, Dave, just because I'm curious about what's going on in South Carolina on the male and female side with all this in-state talent talk that we have. A lot of guys and gals going elsewhere. It's been notorious in baseball, volleyball, some other sports, right? Crossing gender boundaries. What's kind of this birthing thing that you've got going on with South Carolina and the Gamecocks?
Right. Well, they've embraced the whole analytics side of this, And so what we've been able to create is a program in state that essentially identifies all the athletes in the state early on. And so the program that's being rolled out, and everybody is invited to participate in it. Every high school, every club, every training facility, and all the scoring for all of these combines across the state is done free by us, right? And so one of the goals of the research scoring is player identification. And then they can turn around and host regional combines with all the elite athletes. Now you're getting the elite athletes together, boys and girls. You're creating communication, you're creating in-state harmony, you're creating a lot of really positive things. The most important thing is everybody's working together for the common goal of trying to help kids improve in their athletics and to get noticed. One of the unstated goals is keeping the talent, right? And one of the best ways to do that is early identification and creating a good relationship with the in-state athletes. And so with this program, everybody can participate. It doesn't cost anybody anything other than some volunteers to do their combines. And over time, we are going to create a massive database in state of all male and female athletes. And all of this research is funneled into the D1, D2, D3 JUCO programs in the state, not just football. Obviously, football is the big one, right? But this is every single sport. The goal is to get kids exposure. The goal is to not lose anybody that can make a roster in the state to a state competition.
That's
I'm all in.
Adam McClintock and Dave Bartoo, Matrix Analytical. Great stuff, guys. We'll have to have you on because I'm sure we've got follow-up questions that we'll think about as we
What's
digest.
the best way to get? So you want these? Are we reaching out through Twitter? Hey,
how about this? How about this? This is how much I trust Husker fans that want to know more about this. So if you're a high school coach, if you're a middle school coach, if you run your own training facility, okay, heck, if you're the softball coach in Nebraska listening to this and you're like, how can I get in on this advanced kind of testing and analytics? And how does it work? We have the blueprint no matter who you are. So shoot me a text. This is my phone number. You can shoot me a text, 971-217-8419. Just shoot me a text. I will personally get back to everybody based on their situation and the blueprint we have to be successful short and long term with CAT testing.
I can vouch for that number because that's the one I just used.
There we go. That is Dave Bartoo, Adam McClintock. Guys, we love talking to you. We appreciate it as always. We'll talk again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Later.